everyone, I'm Muriel. If you're new here, I am someone who likes to review and analyze things, chiefly literature, and chiefly things that fall under the genre categories of science fiction, fantasy, horror, anything speculative really. But this is not my booktube channel. My booktube channel is the Purple Bookworm. This is the Purple Game Worm because it's a channel I created to, well, chiefly store my gaming VODs, because I like to play games on Twitch semi-regularly now. Back in the day, I did 2 video game reviews for my booktube channel, which I've now migrated over to this one for Bloodborne and one for Hollow Knight, 2 my absolute favorite games of all time. Recently, I played a game called Disco Elysium. I played all of it on stream. Unfortunately, I did not upload any VODs for it because I hadn't decided to do that at the time, so that's going to be gone forever soon enough because, well, the VODs will not stay on Twitch. But that game was an experience. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a very, very good game, and I wanted to keep a record, a trace of my major thoughts and impressions of it beyond my experience playing it. So I thought, well, I'd do another video game review. I haven't done one in a long time, but I wanted to make one for Disco Elysium. This is a game that I decided to play mostly because my lovely boyfriend, started playing it months and months ago now. It's a game I'd been recommended several times, though, by different friends who know that I'm a bookworm and I love good theming and ideas in my fiction, because I'm also an ideas-driven reader in my science fiction, in my fantasy, etc. I'm driven by its ideas, the world building, the theming, and they're like, oh, you would love this game. The writing in this game is phenomenal. And that happened a couple of years ago. But I was kind of like, I don't know. The thing is, I don't necessarily enjoy the storytelling in video game the same way I enjoy the storytelling in literature. There are things that work in literature that don't work in video games, and there are things that work in video games that don't work in literature. And there's a reason why I say this, because I've encountered instances where I'm like, this feels more like it should be in a video game, less so this feels like it should be in a book, although this will kind of apply to Disco Elysium, but I'll get back to that. So yeah, I was hesitant, but then my boyfriend started playing it. I bought it at some point and then kind of forgot about it, and then decided, okay, fuck it, I'll play it on stream. So I went into Disco Elysium not knowing that much about it, just a little bit. I knew that the developers had cited China Medieval as one of their sources of inspiration. China Medieval is one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is something that is very rare for me. I generally don't have favorite creators. I have favorite creations, not favorite creators, because of the way I kind of separate, art and artists. I have a whole video about that. If you're interested, you can go and check out about my reading ethics, but it applies to art in general. But China Medieval is one of my favorite writers, alongside Asa Le Guin and Jeff Vandermeer. So I was like, okay, that's definitely a point in the game's favor. And then I knew that there was a speculative element to the story, because that is important for me as well, especially if I'm going to play a text-focused RPG. Then I need me something in the domain of science fiction, fantasy, just something. And I did check that there would be something of that general order in the game. So I was like, okay, let's play it. So premise-wise, there's so much going on in this game, but the gist of it is you play as a police officer. Well, for all intents and purposes, it's a police officer, a detective. You're a detective trying to solve a murder in an imagined city, in an imagined world that does look and feel a lot like ours. So it kind of is secondary world fantasy in a way, but it's not fantasy with dragons or magic, but it's not science fiction either. It's kind of this in-between where you have a world that is very much like ours, I would say in the 80s, more or less, because they do have computing, they have computers and things like that, but they don't have cell phones. There are cars, there's electricity, but things are just a bit different. It's like just a different kind of our world, but it's not alternative history either. But so you have this world, and you're in this city called Rivachol. There's a lot of French in this game, as a forewarning. Not a problem for me, because I understand the language, I can speak it, so I could translate a lot of the stuff that was happening as it was happening. There's a lot of French. Rivachol is my boyfriend put it as a failed Paris commune, a failed attempt at a Paris commune. There was a king there, And then there was a socialist, communist, anarchist revolution that failed. I mean, an attempt at a revolution, but it failed ultimately, kind of like the Paris Commune in Paris in the 19th century. It's a failed city-state, basically, a failed socialist city-state that is now controlled by outside state entities and financial institutions. So it's a city without its own government, without its own police force, but there is a kind of police force. That's why I said you play as a sort of detective trying to solve a murder. And this murder is taking place in an area of Revachol where there is a very strong union, a workers' union, which is itself in conflict with these business entities who have sent in mercenaries to set things right. So there's a lot of like union versus big business going on. There's a lot of violence in that area. There's a lot of poverty. And there is just the general after effects of a failed revolution. And the fact that, the city isn't governing itself. It's being governed by outside powers. Now, another little element I will add already into the premise, because it's not that it matters hugely at the beginning of the story, but it's part of the reason why I bothered to pick the game up in the first place, because I needed that speculative element. So it's a world somewhat similar to ours, or very similar to ours. One big difference is that the land masses of this planet that is similar to Earth, they do have oceans, but then they're huge swaths of void, of nothingness. That is called the Pale. And the Pale divides the land masses into isolas, which it's basically derived from, the Spanish word for island. So no landmass is that big. I don't think they're as big as Earth's continents. I'm not sure, though. Don't quote me on that. That's the setting. That's the world. And you're a police officer. Again, kind of a detective. What's more, though, you're a very fucked up detective. You're a very fucked up person. The character you play as wakes up day one in the game, remembering nothing about his life or his own identity. Complete retrograde amnesia. Because our good main character is a severe alcoholic, drug addict, very depressed, suicidally depressed, I might add. Not a happy camper by any means. That's your setting and that's your character, although you are accompanied by another character from a different precinct. You do belong to a precinct, and a colleague comes over from another precinct to help you out in your investigation, because obviously your superiors know that you are a fucked up detective. You're a very good detective. You'll learn this very quickly. You're actually a very good, proficient detective, but you are very much a mess. A walking time bomb of a mess. And so you're accompanied by another detective who will be alongside you for most of the game, at the very least. So Disco Elysium is an RPG in the, I guess to my mind, the OG sense, in that it really is about the role you play and the character stats you choose to give your player character, and how this will help you or hinder you in interacting with the world around you. I was going to say that it's not a very complicated game, but that's not strictly true, because there's quite a bit of intricacy to all the different game mechanics and the character traits. So it's not simple in that regard. It's simple in the sense that there's no combat, there's no platforming. You walk around the city and you talk to characters and you select dialogue options. And said dialogue options might be locked behind a certain amount of RNG, basically, but that RNG can be modified given the character traits you've given your character, or those you decide to upgrade and put points into as you go along through the game. I'd never really played a game like that before, because at the outset, it's not really got a gameplay that attracts me. I prefer something that's a bit more button pressy, interactive. With regards to the actual skills and traits you can invest in for your character, it was actually quite complex and intricate. When you start the game, you're presented with a board of all the character traits you can pick between. It took me like 15-20 minutes reading out every single one, and that is a criticism I have for the game. I don't think it's always made super clear what each trait does, because then you also have hidden traits which you only become aware of like mid-game, and I'm To this day, I'm not even entirely sure what those did. I think they probably principally unlocked dialogue options and character avenues, which would then have led to meeting different characters, because that's the other thing. It's the kind of game where you will just miss a bunch of stuff on your first playthrough. It's the kind of game that wants you to replay it. Cards on the table, I am not the kind of person who replays games. I'm not the kind of person who rereads books often. I will reread books that I have loved, and oftentimes there will be several years between rereads. So it's something that is very rare for me, and even more so with games. I have replayed some games. I mean, in terms of like story-driven, I'm not something like a strategy game like Heroes of Might and Magic or The Sims. Those are games that you just kind of keep playing because it's different. But like Cyberpunk 2077, Bloodborne, Okami, a bunch of games like that, I just generally don't replay games. I have replayed the Spyro games, but there were 15 years between replays. So I don't really like that. I don't like a game that wants me to replay it like almost immediately for me to get more of the story or of the character development. Not that it was a huge issue here, because I got a lot on my playthrough. If you're someone who's looking for replayability in games, though, this is the kind of game that will be for you, because you will get a few different things. Whether or not you decide to give a lot of emotional traits to your player character, or intellectual traits, or physical traits, because those are the categories of traits you could have for your player character. Things to do with emotions, empathy. There's a thing called Inland Empire, which is, I guess, about your ability to self-reflect and self-awareness and imagination. And then you have more intellectual traits, and that's cognition and reason and logic and encyclopedia. Then you have more physical traits, which is just like being able to punch things and break things open. And one that is more about sensual perceptions is how I understood it. That was not super clear to me, but yeah, that's my point. There are a lot of traits, and I don't think all of it was signposted super well. Although I know there's like a tutorial thing that I probably could have clicked that would have made it more overt. Although I think I did have that on for my first playthrough, and only showed me how to use, for instance, you can use drugs. Your character's a drug addict, and I do like the fact there was a kind of ludonarrative element to the usage of drugs to enhance your traits. Because you can do that, but then your character is also a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And so I was kind of like, I don't want my character to take drugs because it's bad for him. You should be not drinking, not taking drugs, but then it can give you really nice stats, temporarily at least. But I like that there was a story reason not to do it, but also a story reason to do it because, like, oh, he's an addict. Well, of course he's going to take it. So that was very well implemented. And you also have 2 health bars. You have a physical health status and a mental health status, and you can die or lose the game by losing one or the other. In fact, this happened to me quite early in the game. My character just got really depressed over something. I lost all my mental health points, and then the game ended, and there was like a newspaper article about how my cop character was like, oh, you quit the force because he was so depressed. I was like, oh shit. I reloaded it and was fine, but that was neat. I like that. I don't think I've seen that before since. Just kind of this dual quality health bar. I mean, 2 health bars, but one for mental health, one for physical health. But that again goes very well with the actual story and its themes. I do want to add something, because it's a very important aspect of the game. It's not really a question of gameplay as such, although it does affect gameplay. I've been talking about skills and traits. A big facet of this game and the way it delivers its story is that you interact with other characters, the NPCs, obviously, but you also interact quite a bit with aspects of your own, your character's psyche. It's not like he has split personality or DID exactly. It reminded me of, if you're familiar with this, IFS, internal family systems. It's a kind of therapy where you look at a person as a system of parts. They're integrated parts, because they're not so integrated if you do suffer from DID. But parts, they're aspects of yourself, of your psyche, that fulfill various roles in dealing with the bad things that happen to you or were done to you. Anyway, it reminded me of that. You basically look at your main character's parts. You interact with your main character's parts, like you interact with the character's sense of reason, its sense of drama, its sense of physicality, its sense of empathy, and each of those psyche traits are their own characters. They have their own voice through text, and I thought it was fascinating. It's an absolutely fascinating way to explore character and to tell a story that is very character focused. I did want to add that because, well, it is part of the gameplay because it impacts how you interact with other characters, what you can unlock, what kinds of quests you can get access to, but it's also a fundamental aspect of the storytelling itself. But I love that. A little note on basically the game's overall art direction. The game has a very distinct and unique illustrative style that I enjoyed. I mean, it's not the kind of art I would seek out on my own, but it fit the tone and the vibe of the game and its story to a T. The map you get for the game was beautifully rendered. It is useful. It's not as useful as other kinds of video game maps, so that's all I'll say. But it was very pretty. I really liked the map. And then every NPC has a specific portrait done for them. I love the art style of those. Every trait, all those traits I mentioned, reason, empathy, logic, also has a bit of character art for it, but it's a much more abstract, almost vaporous art style. I really liked that choice for those kinds of aspects of the psyche. One funny little note, though, is one of them reminded me of a face hugger, if you're familiar with those. It kind of looked like a face hugger seen from below. And then you also, that's another mechanic in the game, which is why it's both simple and complicated. You can unlock thoughts, and the thoughts themselves give you bits of lore and theming in the game. But every time you unlock a thought, that comes with a bit of actual surrealist, very bizarre art, but I like the weirdness of it. I like the weirdness of those bits of art. And at times I wish I could just see a fully completed mural or painting made up of all of them, because it kind of seemed like these scenes were related to one another somehow, and I wish I could have just seen a full picture of them. Maybe someone's done that online, I should check that out, but I love those as well. And then a quick note with regards to the audio side of things. The soundtrack is quite melancholic. There's definitely a sad vibe to the music you do get in this game, which it's not the kind of music I like. That being said, again, it fit the tone of the story in the world it was set in perfectly. I do have to mention, though, the voice narration. A lot of the text you get in this game, not the text you can choose yourself for your character, but the characters you interact with, the NPCs, there's voice acting. Like all the texts you can choose to have it, to hear the voice acting for all the text. The voice acting was phenomenal. Like the choice of voices for the different characters, absolutely perfect. There is also a voice for your inner monologue. Well, actually, there's a few different kinds of voices for your inner monologue. And there is your own character's voice. But you'll have to wait a while until you figure out, oh, that's actually what my character sounds like. Interesting. That was a really great moment, me figuring out, oh shit, that's what he actually sounds like. That's his voice. But then there are different voices for, like, his mind's voice. Well, like 2 or 3 different voices for his mind, his psyche. That too was very, very well done in terms of character development and character work. Speaking of which, the character work and the character writing was absolutely phenomenal. On par with, say, George R. R. Martin's character writing. I know it's a completely different kind of storytelling. It's a different kind of character writing, but the quality of Martin's character writing for me is among the best. This was kind of on par with that, basically. It's excellent character writing. A lot of the characters were just fully realized people with layers to their personality and nuances to the way they were shown to perceive things, think about things, feel about things. It was excellent across the board. So many of the NPCs had so much personality and they were distinct and, again, felt like real living people. Some of the standouts for me, for those who have played the game, Kim. So Kim is the police officer. Sort of. The detective who is your colleague throughout the game. I wanted Kim to be the bestie for our player character because he's a great character. He stays chill all the time, and he takes the batshit craziness of the player character in his stride. He's just great. Another standout is Kuno, whom I hated at first. He's a tween character who is insufferably obnoxious at first, but that's also a testament to the quality of his character writing. Joyce was a standout character for me. She's more of she incarnates the neoliberal and the neoliberal philosophy you can interact with in the game. There was Everard, he's a union leader, an absolutely slimy slimy character I never trusted, but again, very well written. There's Lena, who is the wife of a cryptozoologist who is a charming older lady. Cindy the Skull, who was an anarchist, artist, foul-mouthed as all hell, but again, a lot of personality. There was Titus Hardy, who was, well, again, I don't want to spoil too much, but a standout character amongst the Unionist faction, well, it's not really a faction, but anyway. Also, Clashia, a later character, I guess, so I won't try not to spoil here, but interesting and well-written character. So, the play character, I said he's an alcoholic, he's a drug addict, he's suicidally depressed, he's a mess. He's an absolute abject mess of a human being. He also has quite a bit of charm. There were a lot of times I laughed my head off at the player character's antics and the way he reacts to things. Although you can make him less unhinged, but I thought it was a lot more fun to have him say unhinged shit and pull out his finger guns, and you're like, what the fuck is this man? Like, what are you doing, mate? I haven't actually watched BoJack Horseman fully. I am familiar with it. I started watching a few episodes with my boyfriend who has watched it and loves it as a show. I decided not to continue watching it because I felt that it could be triggering for me, because the main character, BoJack Horseman, is a kind of washed-up writer who has trauma in his past and is kind of an abusive person and an alcoholic. And one of the exes who abused me was that. The player character in Disco Elysium is basically that kind of character, and also very strongly reminded me at times of my abusive ex. It never really fully went into triggering territory, thankfully for me, although it really skirted the line at times. So the player character is not really a good person, right? Definitely a gray to sometimes bad person, and again, that kind of also depends how you play the player character, what kind of traits you give him, and what monologue, or like inner monologue options you unlock, and what kind of character interactions you unlock with him. But still, the overall picture, not a great guy, but also a guy you can kind of feel some basic human empathy for, or sympathy for, because he's gone through some bad experiences, but he's also done some really bad things, and one of them involves a past relationship, I would say more than that. And so I was kind of like, this character's my ex, and that's not pleasant. But because the character writing was so good and nuanced, I still found it engaging, and I could still find the character charming at times and funny, and he had a lot of personality, and so you kind of want to redeem him. At least I wanted to. I wanted to make him better, not fix him, but like, I wanted him to choose the right options, to not drink, to not take drugs, to be respectful. Although I like saying unhinged shit, but it was harmless unhinged shit. It was interesting for me to play as basically a version of my abusive ex, one of my abusive exes, the alcoholic one. But that was strange. That was a strange experience, but it was still an enjoyable experience overall, because obviously there's the rest of the game as well. That's also a reason why I know there are some people who identify a lot more strongly with the player character, and they identify with player characters a lot more strongly generally with games and with books. As a reminder, I'm not a character-driven reader. I very rarely identify with characters, even main characters, in books. Same goes for movies and video games. So in any case, that's never really a problem for me. So because of that, there was definitely quite a bit of distance between me and the player character. I never identified with the player character. In fact, a lot of the time, I was judging the player character. I was like, dude, what? You can't say that. No, what are you doing? Stop it. Even though I was controlling the player character at the same time. But I think that's part of the magic of this kind of RPG as well. So world building. I can't really say much in detail because I don't want to spoil. Suffice it to say, the world building of this game is definitely one of its strong selling points, because that world of, what's the actual name of the world of that story? I can't remember. But at least, the world in which Revachol is felt very real. It's fleshed out with enough depth to make it feel real, to make it feel wonderfully immersive. Where I was just kind of like, I want to know more about its history, I especially wanted to know more about its speculative aspect, its weirdish fantasy aspect. But you get so much in the game about its history, especially the historical events that immediately affected Revachol. You get info about its religion, about its historical figures, about its politics, its economics. Like, there's a lot there, and I'm sure there's even more in the developer's notes and stuff. It got to a point where I was kind of like, I would actually want to read a novel set in this world. That's actually where I get into a bit of criticism. Because of the nature of this being an RPG that you're kind of supposed to replay and replay differently, there's a lot of lore about this world, and even lore relevant to the player character directly, that I missed, especially with regards to the more fantastical supernatural stuff, which is what I was the most interested in. I missed a lot of that because I just didn't have the right character traits to unlock a lot of that. So I had to go and look it up online, and that left me very frustrated. I don't like that. Just give me the information, please. I'm interested. And I get it. You're supposed to replay the game. I just generally don't replay games. I don't like, and I don't want to feel like I have to. I want to feel like I'm being forced to do it. Because I just don't want to. I will give it props too for having a setting that felt like an equivalent of the failed Paris Commune. I mean, when my boyfriend explained, I already knew what it was, but then when he explained it, I was like, oh yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what it kind of feels like. More than, because I know other people are like, oh, you know, if you're interested in like Soviet communism, play this game. And it's like, yes, with regards to interrogating like political philosophies and political theory, but the actual setting itself isn't really like the Soviet Union. It's more like the failed Paris Commune. I think that makes more sense. So I do agree with my boyfriend that for what that's worth. So in that sense, it kind of has, again, an alt history vibe, even though it's not technically alternative history either, because it is a completely different world. It's just that it is very similar to ours, with a bit of, speculative spice thrown in, with, again, a level of tech that feels like it's the 1980s, because they do have computers in this world. The computers work differently. They have motorized vehicles. They have telephones and intercom systems. They don't have cell phones, though. There's no social media. So yeah, late 1980s, but also different. And so I kind of have to leave it there because, again, I can't go into too many details because I would be spoiling things. Stuff happens in this game that is interesting. Let's put it that way, especially with regards to the speculative element and the theming, which I'll get to shortly. But it is one of those instances where, now having played the game, I almost wish I'd encountered its story, its themes, its world-building in novel format, which hadn't really happened to me before. I have read books and been like, you know what, I think this would work better as a video game. That has happened a couple times to me already. But here's kind of the reverse, because what I was given in the game was that good, but then I wanted more of it, and I was left wanting, and I was kind of like, maybe just give me a chunky novel about this world. And then there's the theming. This game is very rich thematically, which was a delight for me. The most obvious is the political stuff. I mean, there are achievements in this game tied to whether you act like someone who is aligned with socialism, neoliberalism, traditionalism, centrism. So your political philosophy impacts the way you interact with NPCs, the kinds of dialogue options you can get access to, presumably some side quests as well, and how the story resolves as well. I mean, I don't think there are multiple endings as such, but, well, the dialogue options you unlock tied to that will be impacted by the kind of political philosophy you choose to subscribe to. If you choose to subscribe to one, and then you can kind of mix and match as well. I got an achievement for being the defender of the big, beautiful communism, because that was the closest to my own political philosophy. I'm not a communist, but I mean, I'm a leftist, so it was definitely more in line with that. So political theory and political philosophy is a huge theme of this game. To make it more granular, I think there are basically three big categories of theming in this game. There's the more psychological stuff, the more personal, human-centered. Well, I mean, the political stuff is human-centered as well, obviously, but the more immediately personal, psychological-centered theming, which all revolves around your player character. And for me, that theming is around the impacts of mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, the quest for redemption, for atonement. There's an examination of the, well, in this case, inability of moving on from some events in one's life, and how that then affects one's mental health and one's ability to be a good person, a functioning member of society, which then leads to a need for redemption, atonement, and things like that. All of that centers on the player character. Well, there's some side quests with NPCs that kind of touch upon that as well, actually. In that respect, it kind of reminded me a bit of... I hate to bring this book up because I fucking hated it. Infinite Jest, written by David Foster Wallace. For all its flaws, I did hate it. It does have, and that's the best part of it by light years, it does have very strong, emotionally impactful theming on mental illness and addiction. I mean, addiction is part of mental illness, obviously, but like depression and addiction within mental illness, which you have in Disco Elysium. I mean, the player character is an addict, but he's deeply suicidally depressed as well. And the quality of that theming reminded me of the quality of that theming as well, that same theming in Infinite Jest. And then, so yes, there is the more macro socio-political aspect of the theming. So like I said, you know, your game, the progression of your character is tied to his own internalizing or exploration or twisting to his own ends as well of political theory and political philosophy. And then there are lots of discussions with the NPCs about the qualities of this or that political philosophy, of this or that way of viewing the world, of wanting to organize society around more values and principles. So the four big ones are socialism, communism, anarchism, leftism, basically, right? Neoliberalism, centrism, and then traditionalism, which would go into fascism, authoritarianism, things like that. There's just a lot of writing about that. There's a lot that's funny too, and that kind of pokes fun at all of these political philosophies. I mean, from what I know, the developers are very much more in the leftism camp, and this is a game that kind of presents leftism in the most positive light, but at the end of the day, it also pokes fun at it. In fact, I really love this, that, again, without spoiling too much, there is a point in the game, or there is a quest you can unlock that involves two young men, students, university students, and they're into a very bizarre aspect of this world's equivalent of Marxism. In this world, it's called a Mazovianism. No, it's very funny. I mean, it's obviously done on purpose. Like, they don't have Karl Marx in this world, but they have is it Krasmazov? It's the same initials. Like, it's very obviously meant just to be Karl Marx, but different name. But that's fine. I think it's very self-aware with that. But they're into a very weird version of Mazovianism. And they incarnated the kind of person which a lot of people have just come across. I've never come across people like that. They're so up their own asses with theory that they're just completely disconnected from the real world and its concerns. The kind of ivory tower academic thinker. And these weren't even academic thinkers. They were like students, but just they're so overcommitted to these new politics, and they have the zeal of youth, but they're just like going way too far with it, and it's like, y'all need to stop huffing paint, guys. They are Mazovians, so they are leftists, presumably the people that the developers kind of favor, philosophically speaking, which I favor, philosophically speaking, but they're made fun of very overtly, because yeah, there are people who get ridiculous with that shit, that get too up their own asses with theory and just completely lose sight of the fucking real world. And I love that. I love that little bit. That's probably one of my favorite side quests. It is a side quest. Now it's like, yeah, those kinds of people are very much real, and they're Muppets. Thank you for stating it. And so, yeah, so how do you build a good society, a good human society? How do you build a fair society, a society that maximizes people's happiness? How do you conduct the quest for, you know, life, liberty, and happiness? Is that even the kind of quest you should be following? Because obviously there are traditionalists, racists in this game as well, and they're all about these kinds of, because there's a lot about the different ethnic groups in this world, and at one point, oh my god. I will say, a lot of the NPCs tied to very overt political philosophies kind of work as caricatures, but they're effective caricatures, if that makes sense. So that it's not like they were living stereotypes, they had to kind of incarnate a political philosophy, but it was done in a way where they still felt like real people, because you could definitely tell there are people like this in the real world. So there's this NPC that you kind of have to get past somehow, who is horrifically racist, but like 19th century race scientist levels of racism. And there are people like this in our world today. So it's not like this was unrealistic. You didn't feel cartoonishly evil, nothing like that. Because he wasn't mean. He educated the player character on all the different ethnic groups and the races and the superiority and inferiority of various groups. I felt so fucking uncomfortable sitting through that lesson. You don't even have to if you find another way to get past this character or this point in the map. I was just kind of out of ideas. I didn't know what to do, so I subscribed to the race theory. I didn't agree with it, but I sat through his fucking lecture and it was dreadful. Such a hateful fucking character, like horrifically racist. And there's a slightly less racist lorry driver at some point who is also an asshole. And he's an asshole to our colleague. Because Kim is part of a, an oppressed or discriminated against ethnic group, a minority ethnic group. And so oftentimes we'll come across these characters who are traditionalists, who are racist, and they'll be like, oh, hello, Mr. Yellow Man. And I was like, whoa! You can't, what? Excuse me, fuck you! You don't speak to Kim that way. Kim is amazing. Fuck you. See, that's what I mean, though. That it's done in a way that's very realistic, because I would react like that in real life. Like, excuse me, what the fuck, dude? So obviously those people don't necessarily think that the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness is the way to go for everyone. But you have all these different political philosophy, those theories kind of just presented and discussed. Obviously some are presented in a worse light than others. It's not all like equal opportunity, neutral, like it's not that obviously, but it is part of the theming of this game. Like how do you organize society to maximize efficiency, productivity, profit, happiness, liberty? Here are all these political philosophies that a lot of characters care about, discuss, explore, or use to your own ends, because that's kind of what the play character does as well. He kind of takes bits and pieces for different political philosophies to justify his own actions and his own ways of interacting with others and a past relationship and things like that. But so, absolutely great. And also, you have this kind of huge elephant in the room that is Revachol itself, right? This city-state that has lost its ability to self-determinate because it's been governed by outside powers. So that's also part of the story. Finally, there's a third little category of theming that is a bit more on the edge, out on the edges, and part of it, how do I put this? I encountered it on my own, in my playthrough, towards the end of the game. You can engage with it more fully if you unlock other parts of the game, which I didn't, but which I'm aware of because I looked it up online. Just full disclosure there. It's the human dilemma of consciousness. The curse and the blessing of consciousness, and what does it mean to be human and to be conscious of your own existence, of your own self, of the world around you? What is the pain of being? What is the beauty of being? And kind of interrogating that. That comes in semi-heavily, or it came in semi-heavily for me towards the end of the game with a kind of what the fuck out there event. I won't say more. There's value in asking that question and exploring that question. What I didn't like with Disco Elysium is how human-centric it was made. Because I don't agree that it is unique to human beings. I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. So it kind of went into that bit of, what I call human exceptionalism shtick, which I hate. I don't like that. I don't subscribe to it. Now, I can't really comment on the quality of the execution of this theme, because I didn't get that much. Well, that's not entirely true. Now I think about it, you do get sprinklings of it throughout the game as well, with the player character kind of self-reflecting, tied back to his own demons and experiences of grief and loss and mental health. Okay, fine. I guess it was alright. It's just, again, the basic premise of it being this quintessentially human thing, I just kind of reject out of the gate because I just don't agree with it. And full disclosure, it is also linked to the Pale, so this kind of void, nothingness that separates the continents, the Asolas of the world of Disco Elysium. But a lot of that I just did not get in my playthroughs. Again, I can't really comment on that. Overall, Disco Elysium was a very good game. I had a blast playing through it. That being said, yes, unfortunately there is a but. I was a bit let down by the ending, because I won't spoil it, but how do I say this? Something about it felt a bit magical realism-y to me. If you know anything about me, I fucking hate magical realism as a subgenre. I do not think that Disco Elysium as a story, like the story of the game, I don't think it is magical realism. Again, there's too much like speculative stuff for it to be the wishy-washy bullshit of magical realism. I just hate magical realism. No, it is, again, in my book, it's like weirdish, light, surrealist secondary world fantasy. That's the best I can put it. But something about the very ending, the major event at the end of the game kind of tasted a bit like magical realism. And I was like, meh. Yeah, okay. Because there's just, the game is paced pretty evenly throughout, but then there's a massive upping of the philosophical existential stakes at the very end of the game, where you're kind of like, what the fuck is happening? What is happening right now? What do you mean XYZ? I won't spoil. What? And then it ends. And then you're just kind of like, what was that? And then you're given 5 seconds to have the actual narrative conclusion of the game, and then credits roll, and you're like, hey? And I was not a fan of that. I was not a fan of that at all. Like, that very ending felt so abrupt, given the massive what the fuck thing that happens right before. You just have no room, no time to breathe and collect your thoughts, and it's just like, it's over. It's like, what? That being said, you do also, prior to the what the fucky thing, you get a conclusion to the story's emotional arc. Like, the player character, there's an emotional thing that he carries throughout the game, and there is a resolution to that emotional thing. And that was very well done. That felt very satisfying. I'm not saying happy. I'm just saying it felt satisfying. It felt very satisfying, and I like that. But I almost feel like the game could have left it at that, or just focus more on that and then tape it off towards the overall narrative ending. It just goes into really what the fuck territory. There are a lot of players, because I went online to see like comments about this. A lot of players find it very emotionally impactful, find it beautiful and meaningful. I mean, I liked aspects of it. I didn't like some of the thematic implications of it, which have to do with this human exceptionalism stuff. But just most of all, it was just like, what the fuck is happening right now? What? How does this connect back to the rest of the story? So that's a bit of a shame. But okay, to each their own, I suppose. And again, I guess my major bit of criticism towards the game is that you can just miss a lot of lore and character development, or character fleshing out through the game, because, well, you're locked into a certain set of traits and skills, and there's only so much in terms of experience points you can put in different traits, and so yeah, the game kind of wants you to replay, and I'm like, I don't do that. I don't want to. No. So that was not to my personal preference. And so, yeah, I think this is one of those rare instances. It might be the actual first time I've played a game I'm like, I actually think I prefer this as a novel. You'd lose some of the player character magic and charm if it was a novel, and then obviously there is a certain magic with RPGs and the uniqueness of your playthrough through the game, and you interacting with the game, and the choices you make with regards to the stats you choose to favor, etc., etc. So, pros and cons to every medium and art form. Fair enough. But yeah, because of my interest in the world building and the theming, I think I borderline would have preferred this as a novel. Still, a very, very good game. It would have been an 8, but that ending kind of brought it down for me a little. So for me, this was a 7.5 out of 10 game, which is very good. In my rating system, that is very good. Final note. Yes, the writing, well, at least aspects of it with the philosophical, political theming and the world building and those little sprinklings of speculativeness, supernaturalness. Yes, it's very Miavillian, which for me, huge plus. It's especially reminiscent of a specific novel by China Miéville, The City and the City. And so my recommendation is, if you love Disco Elysium and you are also a reader, go read The City and the City by China Miéville, and then everything else by China Miéville ASAP. You must read China Miéville if you love this game and you enjoy literature as well. I mean, I would recommend you play this game if you haven't already, but I am a bookworm first and foremost before anything else. Go read China Miéville. That is my ultimate recommendation in relation to Disco Elysium. And on that final note, I hope you found this review interesting, engaging, informative, or just a pleasant way to pass the time. I am aware there's been some really shitty stuff with the publishing studio. The publishing studio has basically fucked over the developer team. So I am aware of all that stuff. It's just kind of beyond the purview of this review, but just to be clear that I am aware of that. But so yes, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you played the game and loved it, or hated it, whichever, and you want to share thoughts, feelings, what have you, you're more than welcome to do so in the comments down below. And on that very, very final note, I hope you all have a lovely day, evening, whichever time of day you prefer. Do take good care of yourselves. If you'd like to hang out with me on Twitch, you're more than welcome to do so. And yeah, I'll see you all, well, at some point on Twitch, streaming a game, or at a later point in another video game review, who knows, or over on my BookTube channel for a book review. But until then, bye-bye!
There. Working class drunk. You know what this means, right?
Kim, are you okay? What?